The Indianapolis Colts were embarrassed yet again on Sunday afternoon, losing their sixth straight game to the New York Giants. Is this season over yet, Drake? We've only got one more to go, but let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast, brought to you by Fan Nation on SI.com. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here by my esteemed colleague and now official staff writer for Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. How you doing, man? Congrats again. Drake was in his probationary period. He is now full-time with Horseshoe Huddle, just like myself, Jake, and Zach. Congrats, buddy. How you doing?
Well, I was doing fantastic. Had a great New Year's. Now I'm doing freaking incredible, and my got to let my feet touch the ground here. No, I really appreciate it, man. It's been a lot of fun writing, and it's gonna be a lot of fun having my first year official with this with this channel covering this team in the off season. Holy cow, it's going to be baptism by fire, and I'm so pumped. So
It's a very exciting time. There's a lot of uncertainty in the air, so that makes it exciting for us. With a new quarterback coming, there'll be a new head coach. We'll see what happens if there are any front office changes, but it's going to be an exciting offseason for all Colts fans. So, but again, want to thank everybody that's been tuning into our episodes here throughout the last part of the 2022 season. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and follow us on all the things. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Go ahead and follow Horseshoe Huddle on Twitter at Colts on FN. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're there. Hit that little bell so you know whenever Drake and I are going live, because you're going to want to be in the chat. If you come with comments in the chat, we're going to shout you out, especially in the weeks to come, because we're going to be talking coaches. We're going to be talking NFL draft. We're going to be talking quarterbacks. Everyone loves to talk quarterbacks, and especially with this class, it's going to be very exciting. But before we get to that, unfortunately, we have to talk about what happened yesterday. And hey, maybe that's good. People can get their gut reactions out just like us, get their frustrations out with the team. But unfortunately, we have to talk about that embarrassment that we saw in East Rutherford, New Jersey yesterday, as the Giants absolutely mollywopped the Indianapolis Colts 38-10. The game never really even felt close, in my opinion. The Colts had a 3-0 lead that really shouldn't have been a 3-0 lead. Should have probably been a 7-0 lead at best. But Drake, as we're sitting there, you're watching in central Indiana. What were your thoughts watching the game, after the game, and what are your thoughts now? Let's hear it.
in brief, watching the game, I kind of felt like you did, but after the game, I pretty much said to myself, I got proven completely wrong. I've thought Daniel Jones always had the potential, but just I honestly thought he looked a lot like Carson Wentz for a while. I thought he was just kind of unheralded. He threw a lot of wild passes, but then sometimes you'd be like, wow, Brian Dable has got him on a level that is just ridiculous. He hasn't just unlocked Jones, he has completely erupted Jones's potential, and it's just showing out. But right now, I kind of feel like the whole team, the whole coaching staff, especially after some certain events happened in the middle of the game, you can clearly, there's no more question anymore that this is a garbage football season. It's the continuity and chemistry is gone, and you will see so many changes in the offseason.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because in my piece that I wrote after the game, I said the Colts defense made Daniel Jones look like a bona fide superstar. And they really did. I mean, the man had 4 touchdowns, 2 through the air, 2 on the ground. And it is a credit to, I mean, it's not just the Colts defense playing poorly yesterday.
Oh, no.
It is a credit to Brian Dable, head coach of the Giants, and offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, who that is one of the reasons why Mike Kafka is such a hot name in head coaching circles right now for this upcoming silly season or Black Monday, once teams start looking for coaches. He's going to get some interviews because of his work with Daniel Jones. He was in Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes before that. It's going to be interesting to see. But but yeah, I think, and as Gary, hey, this is a family show, Gary, but I'm going to put your comment up there. That game was BS, and I think a lot of us feel the same exact way.
Hey, you know what?
Feel
Yeah.
this feel the same exact way, but I think it just reinforced my point that I've been making for a couple weeks now, that this team just doesn't look like they want to be here anymore. And really, can we blame them? Because of what has transpired over the last month and a half. I mean, the Colts got that win in Las Vegas, and they've lost 6 straight. Jeff Saturday is 1-6 now as the interim head coach of the Indianapolis Colts, and it doesn't look like, outside of the offensive line, nothing else has gotten better. The quarterback play has gotten worse. The defense has gotten worse. Now, I don't know how much, you don't want to put all of this on Jeff Saturday, obviously,
Oh no.
but it hasn't looked great. It really hasn't. And I don't. This is why in my piece I said major changes do need to happen. We're talking about Irsay. Jim Irsay needs to stop being so meddlesome. Chris Ballard needs to, if he is still here, like Jim Irsay says, he needs to completely change and look at himself and look at his approach at collecting talent, using free agency, using the draft. And as far as I'm concerned, Jeff Saturday, I see some comments here from Buddy Allen, Buddy Allen Bell, saying keep Saturday and get some new O linemen, brand new QB and not an old one. And Gary saying to agree to keep Saturday. I disagree with you both. I don't think Jeff Saturday should be back as the head coach of this team next year. The Colts really haven't gotten any better since Jeff Saturday came. His decisions have been very questionable. The team doesn't seem like they want to fight anymore, and it just doesn't seem like this is the right fit. I love Jeff Saturday as a person. I don't put this on him, this collapse. I think Jeff Saturday would be good as a consultant. I don't even know. I don't know offensive line coach, but as far as the head coach of this team, leading, making the big decisions, I'm sorry, I'm out on Jeff Saturday. I've seen enough of what I think, or I've seen enough from him in these 7 games to determine that this just isn't what he needs to be, and Jeff Saturday should be gone next year.
You know, it's to the comments there. Look, it's we all wanted, we wanted it to work out. Every Colts fan wanted it to work out, I'm sure, but it's just when you have the curve that is an NFL head coach. If Saturday would have maybe been in the NFL coaching, during his time instead of at ESPN. Not saying he made the wrong career choice, fantastic analyst, but let's say in an alternate reality he does that, maybe it's just we, Colts fans and the Colts organization, you can't wait that long. You just can't. Parks Frazier's another example of a Saturday hire. He basically looked at the most qualified guy in the room and said, hey, go call plays, because I also don't know what's going on. Okay, like that right there, those two being at the forefront of the offensive attack and the coaching position, and an owner who made all this happen. Okay, this is no one's fault that Jim Irsay. I mean, Jim Irsay made the decision, made the compulsive decision, and he's going to have to see himself in the offseason and maybe just leave his hands off and see if maybe his GM can actually do a little bit. Because look at Ballard, he can't make the decisions when you have an owner doing all that.
I agree. And Gary asks, who do you think then should be head coach? We'll address this more in the next couple weeks, because it'll get hot and heavy after next Monday, a week from now, Black Monday. That's when things are going to start to get really interesting. But I mean, we've got Jim Harbaugh out there. Ken Dorsey is a name I like. D'Amico Ryans. I'm low-key a really big fan of Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think he has done wonders there. There's a Peyton Manning connection with Brian Callahan. There's a lot of names that are out there that I think are going to be considered, and it's going to be fun to kind of go through there. Buddy, you're just like us, fan here, win or loss. I think most Colts fans are. That's why we do this, because it's going to be, a lot of people are frustrated. Daniel says that the gutless reaction by the players when that thing in the middle of the game went down ruined the rest of the game for me. Daniel, you're spot on, and you're a
real fan.
We're definitely going to talk about that here. Stats, Matt, buddy. Bad time for the kiddos, not an excuse. Not an excuse for being late.
Ridiculous.
The third host of this show just showing up late. Maybe he should be fired. We'll see. Buddy says the GM sucks. I mean, a lot of people thinking like that. Stats Matt's coming in and saying Mike Kafka for the head coach. We were
Oh,
just talking about him, how good he was. And then Gary, of course, 100% bleeding blue. Yes. So it's good to see a lot of Colts fans are like that. I mean, yes, it's a very frustrating time to be a Colts fan, but Colts fans are definitely loyal. So let's get into the game yesterday. Let's talk offensive side of the ball. Drake wasn't pretty, was not pretty for the Colts. And before you get into your stats, I'm just going to read a couple of them here. Let's start with the third down conversions. Drake, you know how the Colts went 0 for 10 against the Chargers on third down. They
Mhm.
were a little bit better, 3 for 12. Still horrendous. Still horrendous. 252 total yards. Only 124 of those were passing, 128 were rushing. Colts honestly ran the ball not too bad yesterday. What did you see out of the offense yesterday from your point of view?
It's the last thing that you said that really stuck out, and that is that again for the second straight game, they didn't just absolutely pound the rock with Zach Moss. I mean, Zach Moss. Look, at the end of the day, you're talking about what Buffalo's doing with Naeem Hines as opposed to what we're doing, or what the Colts are doing with Zach Moss, and you're asking yourself, did we not, or did the Colts not win the trade in that situation? He's been doing a pretty good job filling in for a ridiculous situation around him, but also for a guy that is arguably the number two, number three running back, and any given day could be the number one running back in the NFL. So I was a little surprised. I thought the offense couldn't pass again. And before Foles did go down, he was, threw a pick six. It just everything was ugly per usual for the Colts. Nothing new here.
Right. But I think if we can take one positive out from yesterday, it's that they did run the ball pretty well. Now they were going up against a pretty bad run defense. And we had
Oh
talked
yeah.
about that before the game. But just looking at the stats here, and Zach Moss was the guy who really led the way for the Colts, because we have to remember Jonathan Taylor is on IR. But Zach Moss yesterday had 15 carries for 74 yards, 4.9 average. He really looked good. And I've been impressed with him. Jordan Wilkins, again, a guy that was drafted in 2018. The Colts cut him. He's now back. He did sign a deal that he'll be with the team next year. He had 6 carries for 23 yards, 3.8 average. Would have liked to seen him get there, get some more touches, but at the same time, the Colts got down and then really just kind of abandoned the running game as they tried to pass their way back into it. But I think what we can take away is I think the Colts have a nice stable of running backs behind Jonathan Taylor. Zach Moss, it definitely fits the style of Jonathan Taylor more. And so that way, when you have a Zach Moss in there, it's kind of how when the Colts would put Naheem Hines in, it almost seemed like it was too predictable that the Colts were going to pass. But with Zach
Hmm.
Moss in there, he's more of the style of Jonathan Taylor. So you can kind of mix and match those. Jordan Wilkins, I've been a fan of Jordan Wilkins since the Colts drafted him back in 2018.
Hard runner.
He's a hard runner, and it doesn't matter when he gets the ball. It just seems like you give it to him, he gets 3 to 4 yards every time. If you need a couple yards, you give it to Jordan Wilkins. So I think that's one one good thing you could take from the game yesterday. But man, and as Stats Matt says, missed the first half, but seemed to mostly the same as usual. Play calling seemed to be as predictable as normal and seemed to go about as every person thought it would. Play calling, again, just was really, really bad. This Colts offense is predictable. It really is. And that's
Yeah.
not going to change next week against the Texans. That's just where they're at with this coaching staff and how everything has gone. And it really, really it makes things difficult for the offense to really execute when the defense knows what you're doing before the snap even happens.
Well, and you're also dealing with a whole lot of, outside interference from the game, like constant quarterback changes and constant rotations and, lack of coaching and morale. Then you can really throw off then you have to factor in inexperienced head coach, a play caller that's giving you the game essentially. And I'm not sitting here saying, ripping Parks Frazier, wonderful person. But at the end of the day, it's really, really, really easy to predict what he's calling. And you factor in all the drama too, and it makes things just really easy for an opposing defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when you have struggling quarterbacks like Nick Foles, who again did not look like he should have been out there. I mean, the stats for him, Nick Foles, 8 of 13 yesterday, 81 yards, and the pick six, and then was knocked out of the game by that sack. But before then, he was inaccurate with the football. Looked like he was holding on to the ball too long. I will give him credit. He did hit Paris Campbell on the longest play the Colts have had all year from their passing game, 49 yards down the field to Paris Campbell. But it just did not look good from Nick Foles. As Daniel says, get rid of the wide receiver screens. That's been plaguing this Colts team all
Can't
year.
run them, and they run them anyway.
And it seems like every third down, it's going to be a wide receiver screen. There's most drives where it's run on first, run on second, wide receiver screen on third, and punt the ball. That's just where the Colts are right now, and that's part of why I don't think this coaching staff, especially on the offensive side of the ball, will be here next year. And that's probably a good thing. Let's look at some more of the comments here. Daniel says they called a Campbell target a drop. Pretty sure he just knocked that drag route target down. Through all the bad, I see some adapting to reduce bad plays for loss. The Ryan Flick a couple weeks ago on a fumble. Our running back room could be prime time. Could be. I really do like the Colts running backs.
Oh yeah.
I think as second half of the year, the Colts offensive line has been a lot better as well. Ryman and Fries have been good in the running game. Fries not so good in pass protection, but I think Ryman has really came on strong towards the end of the year. But let's talk about the offensive line while we're doing it, and talk about how as Kayvon Thibodeau ran and sacked Nick Foles, and then he's doing snow angels right next to him, hitting his body with his hand as Foles is writhing on the ground there. First of all, absolutely classless move by Kayvon Thibodeau. I know he says that he doesn't know that Nick Foles was writhing on the ground. You can hear the audio of the game. Nick Foles is yelling in pain. Like, get over yourself. Then you go over to the sideline and you do this, saying that you put him to sleep. Like, grow up, buddy. Grow up. I mean, I know he's a rookie, but absolute classless show by Kayvon Thibodeau. And then the offensive line. What the hell are you doing, guys? Come to the defense of your quarterback when that's happening. Drake, were you just as disgusted as I was at that showing yesterday?
Yeah, and to double on that are two things. The Colts offensive line used to do exactly that. They used to, if anyone messed with Luck, if anyone messed with Wentz, Rivers, they were all over people like hound dogs. And you even saw Jones take a late hit. Okereke kind of slid into his head a little bit. But man, those Giants linemen were all over him, and DeForest Buckner had to get this whole thing broken up. This happens to Foles. He's sitting there like a fish out of water, literally.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy's doing snow angels, and he's, like you said, slapping him with his arm. And you're just thinking, where's Nelson? Where's Fries? What are they just staring at the guy? Because the first guy out there, who's, by the way, twice as far away, is the trainer. And that's just not okay. And he's going out there and he's still doing the so it's just it's a microcosm of a much bigger issue with rapport and love in the locker room, I think.
Right. Yeah, I feel like this happened a couple years ago. This wouldn't have stood. It really wouldn't. And I don't know if it's a leadership issue in the locker room, if it's just that the Colts offensive line isn't as close with Nick Foles, if they didn't really see it and they were more paying attention to Nick Foles at the time. None of it is really an excuse. When you have somebody that's celebrating by your quarterback when your quarterback's laying there in pain, that's when you have a big Q who used to be called the bodyguard. Get in there and take matters into your own hands. Ryan Kelly, after the game, said it was horse crap. I don't want to hear that after the game. I want to see you show some emotion and stick up for your quarterback in the moment. Will Fries came in here and was supposed to be a dog, really. Didn't see him at all. Braden Smith, Bernard Raymond, the same way. The whole attitude of this offensive line just seems aloof. It doesn't seem like they're tough, and that's a problem. That's a problem with them. That's a problem with the coaching staff and Chris Strausser. It's a problem on Jeff Saturday, and he did address it today, and he said he did not like how his offensive line responded to that. But I think that's just kind of a bigger it speaks to where this locker room is right now and how it's not in a good spot. I mean, you saw fire from some guys yesterday. I was glad to see some fire from Michael Pittman Jr. against the Giants defense. He's
Yeah,
frustrated with how the season
shoving
has
around
gone.
some people.
He's shoving around some people, and that's what you should want. I mean, yes, the season isn't going anywhere, but don't walk around like a bunch of pansies and just not give up that tough persona. That needs to change going into next season.
Well, and you're also looking at Jeff Saturday, and you're thinking this is a former offensive lineman, and he can relate to these linemen way better. And that's been the biggest weakness, I think. If you think about the Colts and all their struggles on the field, anyway, yeah, the quarterback's been rough, the running game's kind of stunk. Receivers, they haven't been able to make big plays or throw downfield, but the line has been not only terrible, but of complete opposite of what you saw last year. And you're starting to ask yourself, are these guys even going to be here in a couple of years, especially after you saw, I get it, a couple games worth of Nick Foles? Didn't really know the guy, but you can't let your guy who is in your uniform lay there and writhe around in pain, screaming, and let your trainer be the first guy out there. That's just not
Exactly.
acceptable.
Exactly. The chat is blowing up right now, Drake. So let's get to it. So
Ooh,
Stats Matt saying, gonna go on a tangent kind of, but last year every Steelers fan complained about the offensive coordinator calling so many plays way behind the line to gain on third down. That seems to be what we're doing. Exactly. It doesn't seem like the Colts are very aggressive on third down. That's on Parks Frazier, and that's on the quarterbacks for not making those plays as well. Timothy Clark says that he's pleased, or maybe he's pissed. I don't know, but hey, Timothy, good to see you. Tez, our guy Tez, what's up, man? Good to have you back. He says, "What's up, fellas?" And yeah, yesterday was a mess from start to finish. Ready for next week to be over with, and it sucks because I love this team, but the season has a really bad taste in our mouth. I think a
true.
lot of Colts fans are feeling the same way you are, Tez. He says he's also looking forward and seeing what Ballard has to say at his press conference.
Ooh,
That is going to be very interesting to see what Chris Ballard has to say at his end of the year press conference, see his demeanor, see if he is honest about what's going on. We probably will have a show that night breaking down everything that Ballard says from his post game or from his year end of year press conference. So be on the lookout for that. Daniel says, not something I would ever advocate, but I would rather be hearing the pundits and journalists cover the brawl that ensued after all of that. So yeah, I mean, there just wasn't any. There really wasn't. And that's the thing. I'm not advocating for Quentin Nelson to just beat the crap out of the guy or when Thibodeau when he's laying on the ground.
yeah.
But take some exception of that. Like that should not have happened. Whether Thibodeau knew it or not, that's when your offensive line, the biggest, supposed to be most fierce guys on your team, say, hey, that's not okay. You are not going to do that to our quarterback. Imagine if that happened to Jalen Hurts. Do you think the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line would do that? Think of Dak Prescott. Do you think the Dallas Cowboys would allow their team to do that? How about if Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen is laying there on the ground? Yes, they're superstar quarterbacks, but at the same time, it does that's irrelevant. If your quarterback is laying there, the supposed leader of your team, leader of your offense, and he's just being disrespected as he's laying there on the ground in pain, as the offensive line, it is your job to stick up for him and send a message that that is not okay. Stats Matt says Nelson used to be a guy who picked up our downed ball carrier first, and now he won't even defend the quarterback. And
Yeah.
it's just very, very confusing, and it's alarming at where this locker room is, because we hear Ballard preach about culture, culture, culture. You get the right guys in the locker room, and when a season has gone the way it has, I mean, and then just this things are not adding up. Things can change. I'm not saying that all the offensive linemen needed to be traded or cut before this, but there needs to be a change in the culture and a change in the attitude of the entire Colts organization, I think, moving forward.
Well, and that's why it's so exciting to talk about the next head coach, because you're going to get a regime with that person. And, I wrote a piece about a kind of a dark horse candidate in Jim Caldwell, where, you got experience and kind of a mind master, as opposed to, someone that might be even better of a fit. Who knows, like a Harbaugh, who's going to literally destroy you if you go on the sideline after not sticking up for your hurt quarterback. Can you imagine if Jim Harbaugh was the coach? Oh, wait, if he was, we don't have to worry about that, because that probably wouldn't have happened. So,
Probably not.
that's why it's so exciting, because whoever that is going to come with a different coordinator, probably a different line coach for sure. And A different attitude, and that's what linemen are built on, is attitude. And there was none of that yesterday.
100%. Well, Jake, let's move on to the defensive side of the ball here. Again, the Colts defense, it just looks like they've, I don't think given up is the right word, because they are still playing hard out there, but it just looks like the dam has opened. They've carried this team all season, and now they're just unable to carry this team any longer. Giants had 394 total yards, were 4 of 7 on third down, excuse me. And Daniel Jones, I mean, like I said, he looked like a bona fide superstar yesterday because of what this defense was allowing him to do. He was 19 of 24 passing for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns with a quarterback rating of 125.2. His QBR. So QBR is a metric that ESPN uses to track quarterback play and kind of judge it. It's on a scale of 0 to 100. Daniel Jones' QBR yesterday was 96.9. Hard to play a better game than Daniel Jones did yesterday. And then he had 91 yards on the ground for 2 touchdowns as well. Daniel Jones, whatever he wanted to do, the Colts defense allowed it yesterday.
And something that's even more of a maybe forgotten about this game is that they held Barkley, who is the main man. I mean, he's the receiver. He leads the team in receptions. He's one of the best rushers in the NFL. This is one of the most prolific running offenses. He was only held to 12 carries for 58 yards and 2 catches for -5. Okay, that right there, as we talked about, and I even said if they can do that to Barkley, they're going to win the game. But they still allowed Jones to find guys like Richie James, guys like Isaiah Hodgins, guys that are starting to show they can play some football. And it was just really disgusting to watch, because you'd think that the one guy that makes the offense move, you stop him, you stop them. Just wasn't the case at all.
Colts defense let a controversial quarterback who's not even under contract next year with his own team allow him to go out there and beat them, throwing to wide receivers that it seemed like they just picked up off the street. That's kind of the case. That's kind of the situation that this
Yeah.
Colts. I'm not even going to put it all on the Colts defense, just where this Colts team is at right now. Stats Matt said this looked like a Matt Eberflus defense where the QB being mobile killed us due to our aggressiveness at the second level. But very, very true. It wasn't a way to really combat Daniel Jones. They didn't have a spy on him most of the time. And here's the thing, too. We'll kind of wrap up on the offense, but Daniel, good to see you, man. Thanks for joining in. He said back to work, but one final thing: reduce the penalties. That's my biggest issue with the O-line. I can deal with the sacks. The penalties weren't there killing big plays. Might be different this season. Very true. And I think, again, that kind of goes back to the mindset, just the attention to detail that Chris Strausser and the coaches, along with the offensive linemen, the players, they need to focus on more. And hopefully that is something that is made a priority next season for this entire group. Stats Matt said didn't help losing Rodgers pregame and facing in-game, plus Yannick Ngakoue. So the Colts were down quite a few guys yesterday. They were down. Stephon Gilmore was the only original starting cornerback. They were down their slot corner and Kenny Moore. They're down their starting outside corner and Isaiah Rodgers Sr. They were down their fourth cornerback in Brandon Faison, who was knocked out of the game. So Dallas Flowers played a lot yesterday, and he's an undrafted rookie. He's been great on kick returns, but when you're that banged up at corner this late in the season, it's definitely going to hurt you.
Yeah, and they've been struggling with injuries as the past couple of weeks have kind of piled on, and you've seen it now even with Nick Foles. It's been a really unfortunate year. And then on top of that, you're getting guys hurt, and you can see that there's almost a sense of, all right, boys, we're gonna pack it up, because like every time it seems like someone tweaks anything that's even of moderate value, they're like IR, done. They're
Mhm.
like, we're just going to go ahead and sit you. They did it to Taylor. They did it with Ngakoue. They kind of did it with Moore, even though he was pretty much done. I mean, but it's just been such a rough year. And as you're going into a last game against an equally, if not worse, opponent, maybe for these young guys that don't have an opportunity, you might be saying some different names, some different some different highlights for the game. But boy, at the end of the day, past couple weeks have been brutal with injuries.
It has. It has. Tez says, I think we actually have a chance at Jim Harbaugh this offseason. I know we didn't get the chance at the big dance this year, but I think he will pull the trigger and leave Michigan if Jim gives him the keys to the city. And that kind of shifts us into our last talking point before we go to Colts player of the game is coaching and kind of what we saw yesterday. Drake, what were your thoughts on Jeff Saturday and just the Colts coaching staff yesterday against the Giants?
Flat. Just
that's a good word for it. That's a good word for it.
You'd look, you'd get the camera pan over, and you would just see like Bradley standing there, like Gus Bradley, and then you'd see Saturday, and he would just you'd see him yelling something, and they were doing so bad. I had taken my mind out of the game at that point, and I thought to myself, what in the Sam hell could he possibly be yelling at the team? And it was when they were down like at least 21. I thought that Saturday, look, he's been put in a really difficult position. All right. He got asked to coach the team he loves. What are you going to do? Say no? You're going to take a shot at that. Of course you are, as a legend of the sport. And it just hasn't panned out. At the end of the day, he tried, but good Lord, everyone's going to look back on this interim stint and they're going to see it as one of the worst in the NFL ever.
Right. I mean, you see what Steve Wilkes is doing in Carolina, completely different situation. I understand that, but there's still interim head coaches can be successful. And Steve Wilkes has really galvanized that team, while the Colts have just completely dipped and fallen off the ship. The ship has sank. It really, the coaching looked flat. I didn't like the decision to go ahead and kick the field goal when they were inside the 10-yard line on fourth down. I mean, go for it. The season's lost
after you take a timeout,
right? And then he wasted a timeout to do it. I mean, if anything, just let a delay of game happen. You back up 5 yards. It's going to be a chip shot regardless. Then you let the kick. But I think it's just the culmination of everything, and it shows that Jeff Saturday really shouldn't be the head coach of this team next year. I know Jim Irsay is going to give him an interview, and I know Jeff Saturday wants to continue coaching, but I really hope that Jim Irsay kind of sits back, looks at this and is real with himself and say, hey, I love Jeff Saturday. He's a great man, but he is not the person that should be leading this football team moving forward. It's Stats Matt says, hey Andrew, any truth to the Twitter rumor about Yannick's injury? So what Stats Matt is referencing is there was a rumor going around on Twitter that the reason Yannick Ngakoue got hurt was because he was in a practice fight with Quentin Nelson, where Quentin Nelson hit him in the throat and it caused the procedure. From everyone I talked to, that is not true. That is not true. Yannick Ngakoue got hit in the neck against the Chargers, and that's where it came from. He was able to practice with it, but throughout the week it got progressively worse. That's why he never showed up on the injury report. And then finally, after speaking with doctors after Friday's practice, they decided that a procedure needed to be done that would knock him out for longer than 2 games. So that's why the Colts placed him on IR. It's nothing major, and I don't think he would have even been placed on IR if there was, say, this was the middle of the season, but because he wasn't able to get back in 2 games, that is why the Colts put him on IR, was able to elevate somebody else from the practice squad and then continue to keep on going. And Stats Matt says here that that's the issue I had with Jeff's postgame. Wilkes has had pretty damn good success in a bad situation, and Saturday talks about how big of a climb it was coming into Indy. Didn't really like that either. How he said, like, these were going to be expectations. It was going to be hard. And yes, that's true. But if you want to give a compelling case of why you should be here next year and be the head coach, at least show some signs that you're turning it around, not that it's fallen off a cliff, in my opinion. But let's G-Men 7. We'll take a Giants question here before we go to Colts player of the game.
No problem.
What did you guys think about the Giants offensive performance against the Colts defense? We kind of talked about it just a little bit ago, if you want to go back, but in my opinion, Daniel Jones looked great, and he really took over the game, and the Colts defense really didn't have an answer to stop him.
That, and he also was able to, bail out of a lot of pass rushes, and he really showed that he's got some wheels. He's able to move, and he's not like a big bulky guy like Josh Allen, but he's still a pretty large human being moving down the field. And the only complaint, if I'm a Giants fan, is I'm saying get down when you're running, don't take hits, because he's trying to Andrew Luck it out there, and it's like, look, man, that leads to some injuries. So if I have any advice for Jones, it's just get down.
Right. And I think if his progression keeps going and he continues to work with Brian Dable, Mike Kafka, if he stays, or somebody else on that coaching staff, there's been leaks that the Giants want to sign him to a long-term extension after
Oh
this
yeah.
year. Him and Saquon Barkley think would be a good move as long as he continues this. I think the Giants are in a good spot. I really do. But moving on to our last segment, and guys, if you're listening at home, comment who you think the Colts player of the game should be, because we're going to give our suggestions. So Drake, who do you think out of that awful beatdown by the Giants yesterday, who was the Colt that stood out the best to you as the Colts player of the game?
I think we had the same one, so I'm going to go a different route. I'll go ahead and even though I think that he's really not been able to get any deep opportunities. Michael Pittman did a pretty good job. He had 6 catches for weirdly 41 yards and a touchdown. And, he averages less than 10 yards per catch on the year, which just shows you the lack of downfield throws. It shows you the lack of running the ball to allow him to get downfield and other receivers too. But on the offense, it's very hard to pick one, but I'll give it to Pittman.
You get a even average quarterback in there. Pittman is going to have next year probably 11 to 1,200 yards and probably
Yep.
close to 6 touchdowns
Yep.
and be on the cusp of a Pro Bowl.
Oh yeah.
I know a lot of people don't think he's wide receiver one. He is wide receiver one.
It's hard when your
He has
quarterback
shown
changes
it.
every year.
Exactly. Stats Matt says Bernard Raymond, player of the game. And I thought the young
Ooh.
left tackle did play very well. A lot of people were saying that the sack of Kayvon Thibodeau on Nick Foles was on Bernard Raymond. If you think that, you don't know football, because it was not on Bernard Raymond. Nick Foles or Ryan Kelly, whoever was calling the protection, should have called that out. Bernard Raymond went to the guy he was supposed to block yesterday. But I'm going to go with Bobby Okereke. I mean, he had 17 tackles yesterday, a career high. He had 2 tackles for loss. He had a forced fumble yesterday that Rodney McLeod picked up, the only turnover that the Colts forced on the day. Unfortunately, I think that Bobby Okereke has played himself out of another contract with the Colts simply because he's going to be too expensive. He's going to be too expensive for the Colts to keep him next year. I don't think the Colts can keep 2 $15 million plus off linebackers next year, off the ball linebackers. So, I mean, I would hope that somehow the Colts will be able to keep him, but I don't think it's going to be able to do it for the price that he can command on the open market. Bobby Okereke with a fantastic performance. Stats Matt said that Franklin also has 3 tackles left to break the single season tackle record for the Colts that was set by Shaquille Leonard back in 2018. Big record for Zaire Franklin, who was signed to a 3-year deal and will be here next year, probably next to Shaquille Leonard. Stats Matt also says Pittman is going to break 100 receptions and almost 100,000 yards this year. Excuse me. I think he's at 96 catches, and if he gets 105 yards on Sunday, he'll break 1,000. So, if I'm Parks Frazier, tell Sam Ehlinger to throw the ball to Michael Pittman on every play so he can get those marks. So, hey, there might not be much to watch in the game, the Colts Texans on Sunday, but if you want to watch individual records for various Colts players like Zaire Franklin and Michael Pittman, that's what you can cheer on. But that's it for our show tonight. We thought it wasn't going to be a long episode, but you guys in the chat were rocking it. So of course,
thank you.
We want to keep it going. So again, if you haven't yet, please go and follow us at Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. You can go and like it there. Go and follow on Twitter at Colts on FN. Subscribe to the YouTube. Hit that bell, like I said, so you know when Drake and I are going to go live. You can follow Drake, now a staff member of Horseshoe Huddle, at DWalster_Drake. You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Moore NFL. We will be back Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time. And you know what we're going to talk about? Of course, we're going to talk about Colts Texans But the big thing we're going to talk about, Jim Harbaugh and the Indianapolis Colts. You will not want to miss that. Going to get some
Ooh.
coaching talk coming in. So for Drake, I'm Andrew. We will see you guys Thursday night. Take care.